The cast of female Skylanders might be small in comparison to those of the males, but that doesn't mean that they are lacking in might in the slightest. Now, this huge ensemble of the female cast of Skylanders looks incredibly cool, just like it did in Avengers Endgame, so I love that representation of the gender. And that has, of course, inspired me to make this here top 10 video based around the top 10 greatest female Skylanders, which is not only based upon their gameplay and their character and their personality and their design, so on and so forth, basically everything which makes a Skylander great, but it's also based upon the impact that the character has left from a franchise. So even if I don't like a Skylander all that much from this cast before you, if they've left some sort of impact from a franchise, then that will be taken into consideration much more for the list than the previously mentioned character traits. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10 greatest female Skylanders without further ado. Coming in at number 10, we have Aurora, who is very speedy when it comes to her gameplay, making her a very fast-paced and fun character to utilize inside of the game even. But what truly makes this character stand out, first and foremost, is the design, especially with the small little elements added, like the Master Eon on her chest piece, mind you. But speaking of Master Eon, incorporated into Aurora's backstory is the fact that she is related to said Master Eon. So the fact that this female Skylander emphasizes the relationships found within this franchise is very special to me, and I'm really glad that moving forward we have such a badass light character who's also in a relationship with one of the main characters of the franchise. Hence why Aurora's number 10 on the list right here, because the impact left from the franchise is the very fact that it shows the power of bondage. And that's a very awesome thing to look up to, mind you. Aurora is off the light element, so without such a great introduction of female light Skylanders in the form of Spotlight, I doubt how great Aurora is never would have shown through. Now, Spotlight is an absolute badass, and that's why I love her. She's so much more tougher than a lot of male Skylanders, of course, once again emphasizing the power that females can have. And that in and of itself is very empowering, and her gameplay is just so much fun just because she is such a beast in combat and can absolutely annihilate her enemies from afar. Stealth isn't one of my absolute favourite female Skylanders, but she is pretty overpowered in combat and fun to use, so that's what matters in terms of her character gameplay counterparts. But when it comes down to it, Stealth is one of the most impactful Skylanders of the entire franchise. She is one of the few characters from Spyro's Dementia to have a brand new iteration within every single Skylanders game up to Superchargers, and she's also one of the few to receive an Elite format as well, so the fact that she is part of this very small cast of Spyro's Adventure characters that got carried through all of these different Skylanders games is very empowering in of itself. And then I've already mentioned about the completely badass gameplay and personality that this character possesses. But even better yet, of course, her character has inspired lots of young girls, which has, of course, kept both genders interested in the franchise somewhat. And it's the same going forward into the TV show. Without Stealth, I doubt it would have been any young girls interested in the Skylanders Academy, and they wouldn't have had as much of a role model to look up to. So the very fact that Stealth is that kind of role model to girls and has been around since Spyro's Adventure is just a really cool thing to see, and it's really awesome the impact Stealth has indeed left on this franchise and how much she has influenced it going forward. Number 7 is Nin Genie, our only female giant, which of course emphasizes the fact that all giants can be strong, they can be fearless, they can be formidable in combat, no matter if their gender. So the very fact that Nin Genie emphasized that even gimmick characters can be of both genders is really important and really impactful moving forward, despite the fact that Swap Force didn't actually have any female swappers, which was a bit strange after having Nin Genie showcase how great a female gimmick character could That leads quite nicely onto our number 6 slot on the list right here, dedicated to none other than Gearshift, the first ever female Trapmaster announced for Trap Team, which of course was highly important at the time because we came from a game known as Swap Force that had none of the gimmick characters, aka the swappers, being female, as previously mentioned. So Gearshift given Skylander fans the hope for more female-based gimmick characters moving forward was very impactful towards Trap Team and the news and leaks surrounding it. And of course, it was only the start of showcasing a much better ratio of female to male gimmick characters, because there were around 4 female Trapmasters, which is the greatest gimmick, which is the greatest ratio even of male to female gimmick characters so far in the franchise. So yes, that, my friends, is why Gearshift is so important to this franchise, being the first female Trapmaster announced and making news around said female Trapmasters being more exciting after her announcement even. Our number 5 on the list is Whirlwind. Just like Stealth Elf, she is one of the few Spyro's Adventure characters picked out to be an elite, and she is so overpowered because of it. But she's overpowered even without the elite form, and that makes her so much more fun to use in gameplay than Stealth Elf. Even though both of them are overpowered, I just find Whirlwind and her moveset much more enjoyable to play as. So once again, Whirlwind being really fun and having a really cool design, amalgamating both unicorns and dragons together in a very unique and awesome way, is really cool for the character herself. But as I said before, she obviously had a really big impact on the franchise because, just like Stealth Elf, I'm sure she served as quite a nice inspiration towards young girls into the franchise. But she's also one of the few to get the elite form, which means that she's been an absolute fan favourite moving forward. It's unfortunate how we live in a society where it's a stereotype for females not to be great with robotics or machinery. Of course, Sprocket goes out of her way to subvert that stereotype, which is very impressive. The fact that she has such great mastery of machinery and tech, despite the fact that she's not the traditional male class character, is very cool and very inspiring as well towards young girls who might think that, you know, society might look down upon them if they go towards an engineering path because it's not the traditional path for a female. But of course, since Sprocket subverts that, it shows just how empowering females of the engineering career can be. So I'm very glad that Sprocket exists for that very reason, and I'm very glad that they chose her gender to be female for the sake of showcasing how wrong our stereotypes are in society. Another unfortunate stereotype of our society is that females don't make great leaders over males, and of course, once again, Gonequeen is here to subvert that because she not only controls males, she controls very dangerous males. The Doom Raiders are very dangerous villains in Skylands, which nobody would want to interact with, let alone risk leading them and make them fear them as a result of that leadership. And that's exactly what Gonequeen is, a being of such immense power, and that she makes some of the most dangerous villains in Skylands fearful towards her. And that's very impressive. The fact that a female can have that much power and that much influence over others, it's very cool to see that. Not to mention, when Gonequeen was rehabilitated to become a Sensei in Imaginators, she became a very cool figurine with lots of really awesome details, especially along her sleeves, making her look and feel like real gold due to the texturing and everything. But she's also incredibly fun to utilise in gameplay as well, even if she isn't the most powerful Sensei. Our runner-up for the list is Sonic Boom. Now, with Sonic Boom, what's so special about her is the fact that she fights as a family. And once again, just like Aurora, that shows the importance in bondage and the very fact that family bonds in and of itself is a very powerful force in Skylands, one to be reckoned with. And not to mention, Sonic Boom was a clear inspiration for Skylanders moving forward, such as Bad Juju, who also fight in a family dynamic. So the fact that Sonic Boom is such an inspiration to said characters once again shows how much of an impact Sonic Boom had on the franchise and just how badass of a female she actually is. But for number one greatest female Skylander of all time, it's obviously Smolder Dash. I've talked in the past about how great her design is, and I stick to that to this day. Her colour palette is very fitting of the design, especially since she's kind of statue-like, resembling the Statue of Liberty. So the fact that real-world cultures and influences went into this design to make it look as grand as it does is awesome in and of itself. But you can also say that Smolder Dash had a very huge impact on the franchise as a whole as well, because going into Swap Force, the only element without a female Skylander was fire. So the very fact that Smolder Dash introduced us to the idea of a fire female representative is very cool, and obviously that inspired developers further into the franchise iterations with characters like Torch and Ember, who I'm sure would not be as great as they are if it weren't for Smolder Dash's influence over them, because her gameplay, as well as her design and her character, are so flawless. She's fast-paced, she's powerful. Everything I look for in a great Skylander, she possesses, and she has that incredible impact of being the first female Skylander after having 2 games of no fire female characters. So yes, Smolder Dash without a doubt is the greatest female Skylander of all time. That basically does it for this top 10 video. I sure hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I haven't offended anyone. The whole idea of this list was to show how great the female Skylanders are, and not the complete opposite of that. So yes, please just take this as a nice, fun little video that I've put together, and don't be too offended by it if you are female, obviously, or even if you're male and just a huge feminist, which in that case, power to you. So regardless, it's time to sign off, obviously, with the top 10 having come to an end, and I want to thank every single one of you for watching and for taking this, maybe even with a pinch of salt in some instances. So yes, until the next top 10, peace.